Hi folks, I'm a fashion designer and I've bought dresses worn by celebrities, specifically Blake Lively, Kendall Jenner, and Kim Kardashian. And let's just say the quality on some of them is better than others. So of course we're going to analyze, we're going to critique, and we're going to have a look at some of the techniques that go into making these dresses. Let's start with this Oscar de la Renta dress worn by Blake Lively. So Blake wore this little ODLR number in 2024 to promote It Ends With Us. So she is a designer dress, she was not cheap. She cost about 8,000 something Canadian dollars, so that's roughly 6,000-ish American. And the price point, in my opinion, can be largely attributed to these beautiful embroideries. In addition to, you know, markup and paying for the brand and yada yada. Before getting into the embroidery of it all, let's talk general construction. It's nothing crazy. It's a pretty basic corset with some plastic boning sewn to a tulle fabric. There's a waist stay to help hold the dress up. You've got some basic cups, which are kind of rigid and not really that nice against the skin, to be perfectly honest with you. So yeah, it's got the bare minimum interconstruction necessary for a strapless dress, not a whole lot more. Like I said, the real money maker is the embroidery. These floral embroideries truly are stunning. I don't think the photos of Blake or even the photos or videos that I took of the dress really do it justice. I found them so completely exquisite in real life. Not knowing much about embroidery myself, I spoke to seamstress and artist Coco Yang about what might have gone into making this dress.
Over here are my two industrial, sort of industrial.
Okay.
Sorry, they're the two embroidery machines. Now, most embroidery machines come with some designs pre-built into them. So if I click this, for example, these are some of the designs that are already in there. Cool. Like a Santa Claus. You want to pick which one?
Ooh, how about maybe this one?
This one? Okay, perfect. So now what I need to do, I've got my hoop. I actually need to load either some fabric or some stabilizer into this. So with machine embroidery, if I decide to just load a little bit of fabric, the fabric might not be strong enough to stay tight within this hoop, depending on how dense the stitching I'm doing is. Stitching a straight line is very different from filling in an entire circle. So depending on how dense the stitching is, as well as how strong my fabric is, as well as how big my design is, I might have to use some stabilizer to make sure nothing goes all wonky. Now, I also have a bobbin, so this is very similar to how sewing machines work.
Yep.
Except most of the time with machine embroidery, you want to get a pre-wound bobbin.
Oh, okay.
Because you use up a lot of thread. Like this tiny little design is 495 stitches.
Wow.
Now it's at the right spot. Now I can press start, and it's going to embroider the black one first. Moves to the black. There we go.
Ooh. This is so cool.
I know, right? These machines are addictive to watch. So now it's just done the black. It's going to cut the thread, and it's going to go do the red now. And now I can take this out.
That was extremely satisfying to watch.
I know, right?
Gosh, it is so cute. Wow.
Now, this is the very simple type of design where you're just embroidering a little thing onto a piece of fabric. You can get extremely complicated with this stuff, which is what I suspect they're doing in that Oscar de la Renta dress.
Yep.
From the pictures of the inside, it looks like the outside of the dress is literally just there to be pretty, and the inside structures is more like a corset.
Right.
Now, the way they do that pretty fabric is there's this thing called bridal mesh, or some sort of mesh that they use that they can either embroider directly on the mesh, or they could do something called freestanding embroidery, in which they embroider on either organza or a water-soluble stabilizer.
Okay.
So then you can cut away the organza or wash away the stabilizer to just be left with that flower that you've embroidered, and then you hand sew it onto the mesh.
Interesting.
That is how a lot of haute couture garments work. It's just a lot of hand sewing.
Yep.
If I had to guess, I would say that dress is a mixture of embroidery directly on the fabric, freestanding embroidery that you hand sew onto the fabric, plus probably a little bit of hand embroidery as well.
So I think it's pretty clear why this dress is so expensive. even though obviously a lot of the price is markup like with any designer brand. But the embroideries just require a lot of material and knowledge and equipment to execute. Thanks so much, Coco. That was really insightful. Please give her a follow on Instagram or check out her YouTube channel. Next up is the other Blake Lively dress. It is from Versace. She also wore it in 2024 to promote It Ends With Us. Now, this was a bit of an unfortunate look when Blake wore it because she kind of looks like a baby, does she not? With these yellow tights and plasticky looking shoes and just the very saturated primary colors. This would be such a cute little outfit on a baby, but you don't really want to look like an adult baby, right? Anyway, what I think is relevant to note here is that you can see the tights through the dress when Blake wore it, which means that she probably got some kind of editorial online version. Whereas the one you could buy online from Versace at the time had a little white silk satin lining with the strawberry and ladybug print. So you would not have been able to see tights through that dress. It was very opaque. Now, the outer fabric of the dress is a Devoré velvet. This is also called burnout, and essentially it's a fabric manipulation technique that I am trying to recreate here somewhat unsuccessfully, as you will see, where you have velvet with two different fiber types. The base of the fabric needs to either be protein-based, so like silk, or a synthetic like polyester or nylon. And then the pile, i.e. the fluffy part of the velvet, needs to be cellulosic, so either a man-made cellulosic fiber like rayon, or a natural fiber like cotton. Silk rayon velvets are a pretty good bet for this technique. That's what I'm working on here. I think the Versace one was actually a nylon base though, less luxurious than silk, with a viscose pile, viscose being a type of rayon. Anyway, a chemical treatment is applied to the fabric to burn away the cellulose in that area while keeping the silk or synthetic base intact. I assume there would be some kind of industrial process for this, not just applying with a little squeeze bottle like I am. But anyway, so in the end you're left with a design. In this case, I attempted to make a cat playing with Christmas baubles. It sort of worked. And in Versace's case, they have these sweet little flowers and ladybugs and strawberries. Beyond that, the construction is fine. The sides are sewn with French seams, which are considered to be a premium seam finish. The hem is a fairly narrow rolled hem, double turned and top stitched, which looks very nice in my opinion. Overall, it is a quite sweet little dress. It cost a cool $4,000 Canadian. That's probably like 3,000 something American, so not cheap by any means. And of course, for sure, there is a lot of markup in there. Because even though the seam finishes are higher end and the fabrics would have been on the pricier side, the silk satin certainly is not cheap, and neither is a Devoré velvet. Even though this one that Versace used is nylon and viscose, I believe, as opposed to silk, there's just a lot that goes into making this kind of fabric, so it wouldn't have been cheap. But even with all of that, it's still a fairly simple dress. I doubt it would have cost more than a couple $100s to manufacture. So like with any of these, there's a certain amount of paying for the brand and everybody in the head office and all the shareholders who want to get paid. On to the Kardashian Jenner crew. First we have this little Giambattista Valli by H&M dress that Kendall Jenner wore all the way back in 2019. These little tulle dresses truly did have the fashion world in a chokehold back in the day. They were so popular. I recently did a video reviewing this dress and I was pretty harsh with it, but to be honest, it's not such a bad little dress. My main complaints are that it is itchy. Some of the seams on the inside are kind of ugly, this one in particular, and the silhouette is not quite as nice looking in real life as it is on Kendall Jenner and the other models who wore it. The tulle kind of looks stuffed in there in real life, as if they were just kind of like manically shoving giant tissues into the waistband and being like, hope that looks good. It just looks a bit lumpy and crammed to me at center back. The construction itself I would say is fine. There is a very bare bones corset with boning, a waist stay, this hook and eye tape for a bit of adjustability, etc. We've got to ultimately remember that this is H&M, right? Like, yes, it is a collaboration with a designer brand, and yes, the retail price is about $400 if I recall correctly, but it's still H&M. And although this may surprise some of you, $400 is really not a crazy price for a dress. Like, I think you'd be hard-pressed, in North America at least, to find a $400 dress with really impeccable construction, fine fabrics, good fit, particularly a dress that's more formal or has a lot of fabric like this one does. Obviously, a more casual dress would be a different story. So while I certainly don't think this dress is extraordinary, I will say that it kind of makes sense for what it is. Lastly, we have this scuba-esque Balenciaga dress. Kim Kardashian wore a custom version of this dress. I believe it was in 2022 to the Vanity Fair wear Oscar's after party. Hers has a longer train and fit more impeccably than the one you could buy online, which is the one I got. It is made out of a nylon scuba knit type fabric. It comes with matching gloves. It has a train and cutouts at the back with a strap in the mid-back area and some hardware. Overall, I was quite unimpressed by this dress. Mr. Balenciaga, Cristobal, the founder of the house, is probably rolling over in his grave over this dress. First of all, the cut edges are extremely hideous. This is a knit fabric and you don't have to finish the seams on a knit the way you do on a woven because knit edges are stable. They won't unravel and fray all over the place. That said, I personally prefer when they are finished. I don't like a raw edge, even on a knit. It's a pet peeve of mine. But if you are going to have a raw edge, at least have it be straight. This is a complete monstrosity. Like, why does it look like that? It's all jagged. Trash. The stitching itself also has a lot of problems. As I said before, this is a knit. Knits naturally have stretch to them. And this dress in particular is very stretchy and form-fitting. Not every stitch type is appropriate for very stretchy fabrics. Like we see here in the areas where they have top stitched, it's a regular straight stitch, and the seams are popped open everywhere. Now granted, this is secondhand, so it's not entirely Balenciaga's fault. I'm sure it didn't look like that on the rack or when they shipped it to the customer. But like, we probably should not have been using this construction on an uber stretchy dress. Maybe they should have considered a thread with some stretch in it, or a different kind of construction altogether that doesn't use a straight stitch. But the crazy thing is, the places where they use stitches that are appropriate for stretchy fabrics also look pretty terrible. Like this here is called serging, which is not a premium seam, by the way. It's a pretty cheap way of sewing a seam, but it is durable and it is appropriate for stretch fabrics. Anyway, the serging here looks god-awful. Why so many loopy threads? Very messy. I'm not sure what was going on with their quality control when they were making this dress. Maybe there was none. The cover stitching as well. This is a common way of hemming knits. It's ugly too. Looks like there are some tension problems or something. The stitches really vary in length, which is not supposed to happen. In terms of the fabric itself, it is primarily made of polyamide, which for all intents and purposes is nylon. I think nylon is technically a subtype of polyamide. Don't come at me if you're like a chemist or something. Actually do, come educate me. Anyway, now I respect and appreciate that the nylon that they used is econo, which is from plastic waste essentially. Although it's still not a premium fabric and I don't think it costs very much per meter or per yard. I would guess that it's like maybe less than $10 a meter. I don't remember how much this dress costs new, but for sure at least a few $1,000s, which in my opinion is pretty embarrassing to be charging that much for a dress that not only is not made with a high-end fabric, but that has all of these problems. Some of these seams are truly atrocious, and so many of the edges are just left raw, like the seam allowance and the hem. Like, turning and top stitching is really not that difficult. I don't know why we didn't do it on the hem. It also wouldn't have been that hard to do like a nice looking machine stitch along the raw edge of the seam allowance, and that would just help it look more elevated, like they did for the seam allowance at the crotch area of the bodysuit that is sewn inside the dress. So I don't know why they couldn't have done that for the rest of the seam allowance as well. Cristobal Balenciaga, the founder of the House of Balenciaga, was known for being extremely perfectionistic when it came to quality. He was obsessed with fit. He was an innovator, pioneering and perfecting new techniques and even creating his own fabric. So slapping the Balenciaga name on this dress kind of feels like a disgrace to his legacy almost. Like, I know that sounds a bit dramatic, but all that to say, I am not particularly impressed by this dress, and I think my standards are a lot lower than Mr. Balenciaga's, so I can't imagine he'd be impressed by it either. Hilariously, I actually unboxed this dress for the first time at work because I think I picked it up from a DHL pickup point that happened to be next to my office or something, and my colleagues who are fashion designers also opened it with me, and they were all excited about it, and then when I pulled the dress out of the box, they were like, oh. So it's not just a me thing, okay? It truly is a bad dress. Alright, so of the 4 dresses I've reviewed, in terms of best and worst, I think this video kind of actually went in the order of what I would say best and worst are. I really love the embroidery on that Oscar de la Renta dress. It's really something that photos and videos don't do justice, in my opinion. You've just kind of got to see it in person. Then the Versace dress, a bit overpriced for what it is, frankly, but I thought it was a sweet little dress with decent construction and nice fabrics. Kendall Jenner's Giambattista Valli by H&M dress was not my favorite, but for what it is, like where is retailing and the price point, I think it makes sense, and it's kind of cute. I don't hate it. And finally, that Balenciaga experience was a monstrosity. That's enough of me ranting and raving. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.